Hi, Dr. Josh. It's so nice to have you on the show. How are you doing today?
Thank you very much. I appreciate you having me on the show. It's been a good day so far. No complaints.
Beautiful. I love that. And just like I mentioned earlier, Dr. Josh, thank you for honoring the invite. I truly appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, well, I
Okay.
appreciate you reaching out.
Yeah, beautiful. Okay, Dr. Josh, you see, I am quite excited to have you on the show for some reasons. All right. Firstly, my interest in knowledge seeking. Because I believe in order to transition from a chaotic situation to that of a beautiful one, I believe it takes the application of knowledge, quality information. And you see, Dr. Josh, ever since I discovered that light in the Hebrew means knowledge and darkness means ignorance, I've been so keen to knowledge seeking. Why? Because I do not want to remain in the dark. And that's going to make our conversation today very, 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 very important to me and even to the audience. Now, the second reason why I'm excited to have Dr. Josh on the show is for the sake of the listeners. We live in an age where information is as abundant as grains of sand. We've got a lot of information flying out there. So these folks trust me for quality information. And that's why when I came across your profile, I was excited because I believe our conversation is going to be insightful. So for that reason, Dr. Josh, let's get started with your introduction. Talk to us about your personal or professional journey. We're just so curious. We want to know how you got here. And afterwards, I've gotten some beautiful questions for you. Okay, Dr. Josh, over to you.
Thank you. Well, I grew up in a very small town out in rural western Nebraska, Alliance, Nebraska. My dad is a railroader, my grandfather is a railroader, and my great grandfather is a railroader. So I was the first McConkey to go to college. So I worked pretty hard. I wanted something other than the railroad. I wanted to see the world a little bit. And between college, medical school, and military service, I joined the Army National Guard in 2000. And then we all know what happened on 9/11 in 2001. It really kind of changed a lot of things for me. After my service in Iraq in 2007, I switched over to the Air Force, as a critical care, a mobile ICU physician, and a flight surgeon. And I'm a commander right now at Andrews Air Force Base and an emergency physician. So wear a lot of hats now. Now award-winning best-selling author as well. So I feel very blessed to be where I'm at.
Beautiful, beautiful. That was a beautiful one. And I got that. That part where you said you worked out. I love that. I love that. And see who you've become now. A great person, you see. I love that. So, shall we get started with the questions, Dr.
Sure.
Josh?
Yeah.
Okay. Now let us talk about men. Okay. So, what are some health tips that you can share with men? Are there
Yeah.
any?
I've got a segment I've been chatting about lately, like men's health tips for men over 40, and I'm 47 years old, so these are from personal experience. But just some things that a lot of men. It's a very catchy title. So the doctor's orders: more whiskey, more sex, and more sleep are the three big tips that I've had for men health tips over 40. And in serious though, uh, when I started getting over 40, and here in America and around the world on game days, people like to sit down, they'll have some drinks, and when you're younger, you tend to drink a lot more beer. And I started noticing with the beer that I was up all night long, and a little bit harder getting that stream started in the evenings. And just kind of anecdotally, and there's actually some science behind it, but I started switching over to whiskey, which not as much volume. I'm not encouraging people to drink, but if you're going to go out and have some game day drinks, for me, whiskey instead of beer has certainly helped. There's actually polyphenols in whiskey, and it has some anti-inflammatory effects. So I certainly don't promote lots of drinking, but whiskey instead of beer. And the fun one for everybody is the more sex healthcare tips. There was a study that was done by Harvard, and it was a longitudinal study over almost 2 decades. It was actually done in Australia as well, and they found that there's decreased rates of prostate cancer in men who have more sex. Specifically, it was an ejaculation study, which still kind of boggles me that there was a medical study that was funded for something like that, but they literally counted the number of ejaculations, and men who had more sex had lower risks of prostate cancer. So I found that one very intriguing. And the third big health tip that I've had is getting more sleep. When men get over 40, there's a lot of obstructive sleep apnea. It causes a lot of healthcare issues, pulmonary hypertension, blood pressure issues. You literally have higher risks for heart attacks and strokes. And a lot of men don't get those studies. They don't get as much sleep. It's usually their partner. It's like hitting them in the middle of the night, letting them know they've got trouble sleeping. But just promoting men's health to get there and get some of those studies. Undiagnosed obstructive sleep apnea causes a lot of healthcare issues. So those three things right there will definitely increase lifespan, decrease risks of cancer, and better sleep is good for pretty much everything.
I love how you explained it. In that part, the ejaculation part, I actually came across an article, and when I was reading it, I was like, is this some sort of myth? So now that you're saying it now, I'm now getting to kind of believe it. You know, wow. And okay, let's say the man said, okay, Dr. Josh, we've heard you, but you see, I just keep finding it difficult to sleep and, practice these things. How can I, do you have any method, or how can I ensure that I practice these things? What would your response be?
So, the sleep issues alone, for men, it definitely gets much more difficult over age 40 as the testosterone levels start to drop. It affects circadian rhythms. As an emergency physician, I worked a lot of shift work. So there's morning shifts, there's evening shifts, and then overnight shifts. Switching back and forth just crushes your circadian rhythm. It actually has some effects on your cortisol levels as well, with your adrenal gland or on your kidneys. And the older you get, the more difficult it is to switch back and forth. So I know for me, I don't do overnight shifts anymore. Just my body just doesn't respond well to that. And the health issues with the sleep from, just in addition to, just like obstructive sleep apnea, just lack of sleep alone, increased risk for heart attacks, strokes, the weight gain and all those types of issues. So those are really important. So things that you can do at night, in addition to switching away from night shifts or switching back and forth, avoiding blue light exposure. So when you're looking at that phone and your iPad or watching a bunch of movies before you go to bed at night, that's not really the ideal sleep hygiene. So there's a formal studies, sleep hygiene. Exercise is very good. Generally for me, like the morning and the afternoons, I don't like to exercise in the evenings because that kind of keeps me awake at night. But just general exercise, avoiding blue light exposure, and getting a good sleep schedule, getting into a rhythm will definitely help with sleep.
I got that. That was a beautiful explanation. I got that. Okay, let us talk about a leader. Who is a leader? Can you talk about that?
Those are great questions when you talk about what makes a leader. How do you recognize a good leader? People can be successful a lot of different ways with leadership. I think the best way to describe it is to wait till you've had a bad leader. A lot of people don't recognize some of those important skills and what it takes to be a leader, but you instantly recognize bad leadership. So sometimes people have a hard time defining, like, what is a good leader? Well, don't be a bad leader, number one. So learn from people. I've seen some great leaders, as a military commander. I've seen some really bad leaders, especially in medicine as well, and try to learn. You learn from the bad ones, and you learn from the good ones. For me, as a military commander, best advice I have is to surround yourself with good people. So I evaluate talent very well. I can't possibly know everything. And so I really pride myself on being a good evaluator of people, of character, of professionalism and integrity. And you surround yourself with good people, and then you let them do their job. So don't micromanage. If you are not getting the results that you need and you're having to micromanage, you made a bad decision. So you didn't choose good people to surround yourself with. And so you have to own that as a leader, and then you have to reverse course, and they probably don't need to be in your leadership chain anymore. but don't micromanage. Let people do their job. If you choose good people and you empower them, they're going to do a great job. And if they don't, then we need new leaders.
I got that. Just recently I wrote an article on this particular subject, and in the article I said something as to leadership has nothing to do with position, titles, recognition, and all of the stuffs that they call it. I said leadership is really about transformation and service. You know, just like you said, we've got a lot of bad leaders out there. And in several contexts now, one major thing that these folks do is they try to stick to a position. They leave off their titles, they leave off their positions, and they're ready to do anything to maintain that position. And that's not a good leader. That's not a good leader. Okay, let us talk about your book. All right. So, what is your book about, and what does the title mean?
So be the weight behind the spear. It's my call to action for people to engage their communities. And when you talk tip of the spear, so to understand what it means to be the weight behind the spear, you really need to understand what is the tip of the spear. So as a military commander, I've been very fortunate. I've worked in some positions with special operations. And these are guys that are the tip of the spear. They're rescuing the children trapped in the Thai caves in 2018. They're kicking down doors, taking down bin Laden. I'm just very tip of the spear. I can't do those things. I'm a doctor. I save lives. I don't take lives. Every single one of these special forces operators, I mean, these guys are heroes. They do just crazy, mind-boggling things. They can withstand physically and mentally things that no one else on the planet can. So they're here. They're the freaks basically, and they're heroes. Every single one of them had a favorite coach or teacher or mentor or family member that really gave them the confidence to do what they do. That was the weight behind their spear. Our best resource, any community's best resource, is the people. Those teachers, coaches, volunteers, families. So this book is that call to action to utilize that resource, the people, and empower them and let them understand that what they do every single day really matters. It makes a difference. That impact that you're having, helping build leadership skills in youth, volunteering in your church, volunteering in schools, coaching Little League soccer or baseball, those things make a difference. And it makes a difference to those kids. Those kids are the future. They're going to be, one of them is going to be the first man or woman on Mars. One of them may end up being the president someday, or be a special operator or a police officer or a paramedic out there saving lives. These things matter, and they need to understand that it's important. Don't discount your role.
Powerful. I got that. That must be a very powerful and interesting book. So, listeners, you've got to get that book, I tell you. So, I'm just so curious now. How do you feel when you're trying to treat someone, who got injured on the battlefield, and, how are you able to control that feeling is really, really, I tell you, it's quite deep. Getting to treat folks who are injured. How are you able to balance the feeling? How do you feel doing these things?
Well, I've worked extremely hard to get where I'm at. I mean, I spent every night in a library for years through college and medical school, just reading and studying, and then residency. You're putting that to work and learning how to save lives. It's very, very stressful. So you have to have good coping mechanisms. I have a tremendous weight behind my spear, my family, my friends. I've had coaches, teachers in residency, some of my attendings. All of those things has helped me deal with those types of things. My faith is really important. So just understanding that I can do everything right and I can study really hard, but if God wants to take somebody, he's going to take them, and there's not anything I can do about it. I can't be 100%, perfect all the time, and that's really hard to deal with. The first couple of the deaths, um, went on a long run, ran myself until I was going to throw up, and then just said some prayers and had to rely on that weight behind my spear and my faith and my family, and has got me through it. And then some, gosh, 20, 21, 22 years in medicine now. That's something you train and learn from.
I got that. I got that. Okay, Dr. Josh, to bring this to an end, what would you like to leave the audience with, like a final thought? And to those ones who would like to reach out to you, learn more about what you're doing, you've said some amazing stuff, things, and it resonated, and they would love to learn more. How can that be possible?
So realize that everyone has something different to give. So everyone has different strengths, everyone has different weaknesses, and everybody has a breaking point. Like no matter how tough or strong or hero, you are, everyone has a breaking point. So surround yourself with good people, listen to them, lean on them, and then, pay that forward, whether it's, coaching or teaching or being a volunteer, or maybe you just love animals, volunteering at some animal shelters, and then those animals can be emotional support animals for someone else. So like everyone's path is different and everyone is very unique. That's a wonderful thing, and we celebrate that. So bring your talents to your community in whatever capacity you have, and it makes a difference. So you can learn more like at weightbehindthespear.com is my website. So WEIGHT, weightbehindthespear.com.
Beautiful. Do not hide your talent. Bring your talent to the community. I got that. Okay, so that's going to be the end of the show, Dr. Josh. Thank you for coming, and thank you for blessing us with this amazing stuff. It means a whole lot. Thank you, man.
Yeah, no, thank you. Hey, thanks for what you're doing. You got a great show. I got to keep watch a couple episodes, and keep on.
Here we go.